So here we are, the home stretch, the last section of Jeb's book. And Jeb's book, the last, there's a lot of review type information where he's like, these are the things we talked about. I just want to go over a couple of things one last time and kind of set you home free. It was like the last stretch. So some of these things might end up being repetition for you, but it was a good review if you read the book. So we have chapter 16. In chapter 16, he goes over the idea again that you're going to get rejections and that the human body is built to avoid rejection at all costs, and that you just need to realize there's going to be rejection. Try to pivot, as we talked about in the Smith book, the last one. Try to pivot and do the best you can, but in the end, there's going to be times where people just flat out say no, and you just deal with it. It's going to happen. That shouldn't have any effect on your confidence. It shouldn't have any effect on how you handle your business. Just absorb it and move on. That's what you have to do. And just know that he talks about the idea of the meaningless interruptions, that even if you interrupt somebody's day and you interrupt what they're doing, they're going to forget about you. Like, there's going to be the next day. If you think to yourself, how many times do you remember when a solicitor calls your phone? Maybe once ever if like something happens, or if you just happen to be having a real bad day or something. But otherwise, these meaningless interruptions, people move on. So you should move on and move on to the next section. So 17, he talks again about gatekeepers, and again, we don't do a ton with gatekeepers in our industry necessarily. I guess a little bit here and there, but the concepts stay the same when you have a gatekeeper, especially if it's a consistent gatekeeper, if it's a specific company that he's dealing with, to make sure you're transparent, introduce yourself, this is who I am, this is what I'm trying to do, this is my goal. So that way they kind of relate with you a little bit. You're not trying to trick them, because once you trick them, they're done with you. And that's for all business. Don't try to trick anybody, because once they realize it's a trick, you're trying to skew the numbers to get a listing or whatnot, and they see right through it, and they're not going to be trusting you ever again. So make sure you're transparent. These gatekeepers are people just like we are. Be honest, be authentic. And then he talks about the idea of persistency, and that's 16 and 17. Persistency always wins, so if the gatekeeper says no, keep at it. If somebody that's rejecting you says no, call back again later in a month or 2 weeks or 3 months. And he just says, I just keep at it, and I keep at it, and I keep at it, and assuming that once I get a collection of no's, that some days it's going to be yes, and if not, you're doing the very best you can, and you can be proud of the effort you put forth. And that's what he talks about 16. 17, 18 is something that I'm actually trying to work a little bit more on, and that's your IPP, your in-person prospecting. And he talks about the idea of the in-person prospecting being good if you happen to be in a neighborhood, or if you're doing several appointments, or an appointment over there, an appointment in there, and you have a couple minutes in between, stop by and meet somebody in person. That kind of thing is good. And we do a lot of things like Popeyes in our industry and that kind of stuff, which is always good. The Popeye doesn't have to necessarily be to a person's house you bought or sold a home with. It can be to a local business. It could be something else along those lines. But don't just stop by, unless that's your goal, and your goal is just to say hi to somebody and see how they're doing. But be sure that when you do these, you have like a set plan. I'm going to go in there and talk about this and this, ask about this. I have kind of an idea of what I'm looking into. I'm going to do that. And even if, like I just said, you want to say hello and how they're doing and keep them in front of your mind, that's also a goal. I want to just be sure this person remembers me, but have an idea of what you're trying to achieve when you stop by and see these people. Don't just necessarily stop by and see how they're doing, unless that's the goal. And then he says, when you do these things, be sure you put them in a CRM. So I stopped by Fred's house the other day, or I stopped by Sweet Sue's the other day, or I stopped by here the other day, and we chatted a little bit about this, that, and the other thing. Put in your CRM, so that way you remember, so that way you're not stopping by once a week, or you forget and you're stopping by 2 times a week and starting to bug those people. You stop by once a month, once a quarter, whatever your goals are. That's the number of times you probably should stop by and see how they're doing, or ask them a few questions, or whatever your situation is. Be sure you personalize it, and be sure, like we talk about all the time, have a set of like closing questions. These are the things that I want to ask them. Here's the qualifying questions I need to discuss in this conversation. Be sure it's not like scripted, like you're a robot and they know that you're just trying to sell them something. Have a few things you really want to ask these people. Personalize it. Know each person is going to have different things that interest them, and so on and so forth. Okay? But make sure you be direct. Make sure you have goals. And then if you need to, if you're going to have an ask, hey, do you know anybody that's looking to buy right now? Or what are your plans for I remember your son said he was thinking about selling his house. Is he still interested in doing that? Be sure you have an ask somewhere in that conversation as well. So have an idea of what you're going into, why you're going into it. But the IPPs are a great way to stay in front of people. they usually give you more information in person than they ever would over the phone. On the phone, they're usually just trying to get to the point and get off the phone. If you're sitting in person, it's more personalized. So that's a great way to continue growing your business right there in 18. I liked that chapter. That was very helpful. We get into 19, and I think 19, he had to do it. 19 and 20. No, it was a text messaging one. Yeah, 19 and 20. He did them because he had to do them. He isn't a very firm believer, and he gave quite an effort, or like, gave that impression that he's not too into these types of things. But email, he says if you're doing email, do it outside of those golden hours. You can set up emails and set up automatic emails, and you can do follow-up emails when you have to have a conversation. But he keeps hammering home the idea that the call is what's important. Like, call first, maybe email them afterwards to follow up what you said, or send an email in the golden hour, and then try to track it. That's a big thing he talks about too, making sure you track it so you can see when they open it. I know BombBomb does that, and he also gives a list of other places that do that. They'll let you know once they've opened the email, and in those situations you can do a quick call too. Hey, just checking to see how things are going. You don't need to tell them that you just saw that they opened up the email. You can just say, hey, I just was thinking of you, and I just see how things were going. And they usually bring up the fact that they just opened your email. They're like, oh, that's great. I just would love to talk to you about the information on that. That the neighborhood's going up 15%, and it's a great time for you to sell. Or 3 houses just went on the market. It'd be a great place for you guys to buy. Those types of things. He also had some great information for the fact that he really doesn't believe in email. He had great information about keeping these headlines short. Don't ask questions. Those go right in the garbage for the most part for people opening them. He referenced the fact that social media and having that presence helps you get those emails opened more often. And he also hammered home again the idea of personalizing it. Think to yourself, if I was the one receiving this email, what do I need? What do I want to hear? How can this person help me? Do not in any way talk about yourself or what your company does or what you're providing. Again, we talk about this all the time. People don't care about you. Only in the sense that how you can help them, that's how they care about you. So don't craft these emails and send things out talking about how great you are and how great your company is and how many things you've sold. They don't care. How can your information help them? So make sure those emails are direct, they're focused, they're personalized, they keep short, and then if people open them, you follow up with them in some way, shape, or form. Okay? That's chapter 19. Same thing for chapter 20. He talks about text messaging, and he says under no circumstances should you send out like a just mass text message unless you're sending like an email or like a update for an event. Hey, we're doing an ice cream social, and you send out a reminder. But if you're trying to gain prospects from text messaging, he's like, there's just no way you're gonna do it. Think to yourself, how many times do you get a text message like and you just delete it right away? Don't even read it. Just delete them. Just delete them. That doesn't do you any good. But if you have like a phone call, you leave a voicemail and follow up with a text, that's perfectly fine. That's great. And if you see that they open it, that's also good. He doesn't talk about it, but I do a lot of video text messages that seem to do pretty well, and a lot of people respond to those as well. He would tell me that I have to make the phone call first and then follow up with the video. Or if I see that they open up my email, then maybe do a video text. But you have to know your audience, and you have to know what's working, and you have to use these as follow-ups, not the primary source of how you're contacting people. The primary source should be phone calls and IPPs, really. All right. Now we're hitting the home stretch. Chapter 21. If you don't read any of the chapters, except maybe the first chapter where he gives you that home run speech of, hey, get you off your butt and get out there and make phone calls. And then chapter 21. Chapter 21, I actually ran out of space. There's more stuff in that chapter, I think, were quotables than in any chapter in the book. So if you grab chapter 21, go online and Google search it, or buy the book, or grab a sample, 21 is really good and it had a lot of motivational stuff. He talks in general that there's only 3 things that you can control. Your actions, your thoughts, and your mindset. So you get all these rejections, people tell you no, and the only thing you control is how you react to them. That's absolutely the truth in sales and real estate and life. That was a great quote. I really like that one. He also talked about the idea of quitting, and he said a lot of people that are about to quit or just quit are on the cusp of being great, that there's so much frustration in sales that you have to really hammer home, and you have to have the patience, and you have to have the consistency and efficiency, and have a plan, and have your goals, and that people that don't have those things are more likely to quit, and once they quit, they're right on the edge the whole time. You could have had a sale next week because they were doing all the work and putting all the time in and being consistent. So he hammers home that idea of don't quit quite yet. And he goes on and he has multiple paragraphs of characteristics of a winner. And he goes through things that are proven, like optimism and mental toughness. And there's a bunch. He's got 4 or 5. And he dedicates a section of the book to each one of those characteristics of winners. And if you don't have those, it's really easy to change that mindset and have those kind of characteristics where you don't give up, that you're optimistic, that once you get knocked down or get 10 rejections or 15 rejections, you have that mindset that the next one's going to be a yes. And you kind of have to have that mindset if you're going to be in this industry and if you're going to be in sales. He also talks about that you got to make sure you know what you want. That's part of goal setting. That is huge, because if you don't know what you want, then you have no reason to be doing all these things. You have no reason to get back up when you get knocked down. You have no reason to keep going once you get 10 no's. So you have to have an idea of what you want. Setting goals is the first thing you should be doing. And if you haven't done it yet, you need to get out there and do it. The next is you have to have a solid plan of how you're going to get there. This is what I want, and this is how I'm going to get there. All of these things help you when it comes time to being persistent and keep going. And then, of course, how badly do you want it? I kind of want it badly. I do. Or I can't live and breathe without this thing. But I'll make 2 sales per month. My family doesn't eat. That's the motivation. I'm pretty badly, I want this. That kind of attitude. So you need these 3 things. These are cornerstones to your business. And he spends like a big part of chapter 21 talking about those things. And this is one of my favorites. It wasn't a big part of the chapter. He was very, very short. But it was so huge, I believe. He says that if you spend 15 minutes, just 15 minutes, like before you go to bed, first thing you wake up, during lunch, reading or listening to podcasts or doing some kind of professional development, anything, that 15 minutes, that little per day, without weekends and holidays, adds up to 62 and a half hours of professional development per year. And if you start putting that in perspective, I mean, that's a lot of training. That's a lot of learning. That you have to get better. If you take on 15 minutes a day and pay attention for 15 minutes a day and take notes and actually practice the 15 minutes a day of what you are learning, you are going to get better. There's no way around it. You have to improve. All right, and that's a little tiny bit of time that you have to dedicate to it. So those numbers were very, very staggering, and I thought it very interesting. And then he ends the chapter with not just that quote, but a couple of really good ones too. But I wrote down the one, expect to win. And that's such a huge part. You just expect when you walk into a sales meeting or listing presentation, you just expect to win. You know, like I have that principle about me that I know that this is going to go well, and I know I'm going to put my best foot forward because I've done it, put in the time. I've been persistent. I've trained. I've got a plan. I've done this a lot. You know, those things make a huge difference. And he went on, and he's got a couple of great quotes in the end of the chapter about persistence and work ethic and expecting to win and confidence that are all great. Like I said, that's the chapter that if you skip, go back to. That's a great one. And then he gets kind of trails off there, chapter 22. He gives a whole chapter about making one more call. He gives a bunch of stories about how when he was in sales, the time that he knew he had to quit at 5 o'clock, time to go home, he would make one more call. And he gave out predictions that he got a certain amount of sales per year from that one extra call, and that one extra call led to so many more sales per year, and then grew exponentially. And he had other salesmen that lived by that motto that also maybe landed one more sale at the end of the day, or landed one more of this at the end of the day. And he talked about that. I think it's more of a mindset, you know. Once you think you've hit that wall, that this is it, this is the most I can do, to do just a little bit more, you know, just read another 10 minutes of that book, to go out and make one more phone call, to do one more video, or do one more pop-by, do whatever your goal for that day is. Once you think you're done, doing one more extra, so that way you're above and beyond all your competition. And it's just a mindset, really. It's just a mindset. And then he ends up the whole book on chapter 23, where he tells a story about his son's football team that wasn't expected to win whatsoever, and a big underdog, both financially. One school is better than the other school, but with the number of kids they have and all that stuff, and that the game went through, they eventually gained a little confidence, got a couple of first downs, scored a couple of touchdowns, and ended up winning the game at the very, very, very end. And it's just basically a story of building that confidence and the work ethic and the persistency that he's shown throughout this whole book. This whole book basically is a prep speech. You know, like, hey, you can do it. You get out there. You have the ability to do it. It doesn't take any special powers to go out and do any of these things. You don't have to be a wizard. You don't have to be anything special to work hard and to be persistent. And that's the big message of this book, is just to get off your butt, make the phone calls, go meet some people, talk to people. There's no special formula to any of this stuff. So hopefully you got a lot of the message from this book. Hopefully you really enjoyed it. We're going to be picking another one here very soon, so chime in if there's anything you've always wanted to read or you've heard about, where you were open suggestions. There'll be a questionnaire sheet that we send out one more time to see if you guys have a review, to see if you had any more questions or how you did with it or what you learned from it as well. So keep a lookout for that. And of course, I throw this on the blog and I share the blog on our Facebook page. So if you have any comments or want to say how you're doing, a lot of times saying things out loud helps you become more accountable. So maybe make a comment on our blog page that, hey, I made 5 phone calls today, I should have made 7. Whatever works for you. All right, we're here to help and help you grow the business and to answer questions and stuff. So thanks for reading the book. We really appreciate it, and keep a lookout for the next one.